My story is that I lived in the darkness of mental health challenges and mental health struggles, but I now talk about living in the reality of hope. I live with hope. I'm right inside it, and that's because I'm well.
Welcome to the Tales to Inspire podcast. Before we get started on this episode, I would like to invite you to our community so that you can hear more stories to inspire change within your life and positive change within the systems in which we live. All I want you to do is to click on the subscribe button. Your comments mean the world to us with anything that's resonated with you, and I absolutely love your support. I can't wait to go on this journey alongside you. Thank you so much for subscribing. Let's get into today's episode.
I'd like to say thank you to our partners Wellsprings, who provided us a studio to share these stories. Now, Wellsprings provides opportunities for entrepreneurs and individuals with growing businesses in the Bolton area. Thank you so much for your support.
I'd like to give a huge thank you to one of our key partners, Bolton CVS, in helping us share new stories of changemakers within Bolton, and that starts today.
Today, our bite-sized episode is with Rich Jones.
My name's Rich, and this is my tale to inspire.
Just as a quick trigger warning, Rich does talk about his challenges with mental health and suicide. Rich, amazing to have you on here, and I really want to jump straight into some of the themes and challenges around what we're talking about today. And one of them is burnout and mental health. Yep. So can you talk to me a little bit about burnout, mental health, and why this matters to you?
So burnout and mental health in particular matters to me for a variety of reasons. I think there's two lenses that I look at mental health through. One is a lens of having observed it taking place in others. So in my work, I've worked in the charity sector for over 20 years and started off with working with children and young people, and then kind of moved into various other spaces and observed it through the lens of an outside observer looking in, and saw all of the challenges that people go through when they're going through a tough time with their mental health, whether that's just basic emotional challenges or more kind of complex clinical challenges that they might have with their mental health. The second lens that I look through is lived, and so have lived through challenges with my own mental health, and they've kind of again ranged from emotional challenges and just the kind of day-to-day things that people might experience to more acute challenges. And when I talk about acute challenges, I'm really quite open about that. And so that has taken me to the brink. And so that brink looks like making attempts on my life and just kind of, being at the very end of myself.
There's a few, we call it stigmas, or instantly you think mental health, you think, oh, well, that's what mental health is. But it's so much wider than what we think. And I think right now, I have so many conversations around people where people may feel suicidal, but people judge. I had a conversation just recently. Someone said, how dare that person feel that way? But it's like, surely it's how dare you, you clearly don't understand how that person must feel to be in that situation.
Yeah.
So how do we change the narrative to actually one that's actually supportive for everyone so they understand what's actually going on?
Yeah, I think there's the kind of thing that comes with that judgment comes from stigma, and it's still not culturally acceptable. Take guys, for example, for guys to talk about their mental health or to talk about their well-being. Thankfully, there's so many amazing projects and initiatives and campaigns out there now that do have kind of raised the awareness. But, even I think twice about talking about it, because I immediately think there's going to be some judgment here. This person knows me in a professional capacity, or they know me because they're a family member, or they've not known me for very long. And actually, I don't want to release that part of my history or my experience of mental health into this conversation, because there's going to be some judgment. So I think there's still a long way to go in terms of breaking down that stigma. And for me, I think that's the primary barrier to people, A, talking about it, and B, getting the support and connecting to that kind of support that's out there for people who are going through a challenging time with their mental health.
So on that perspective, then, if we look at it from, there is a stigma, we know there's a stigma, what can we do to either change that stigma. I don't think it's an overnight success where we click our fingers and boom, hey presto. Especially for males, if we look at it from a male perspective, is there a way, people talk about spaces, obviously it's like Andy's Man's Club and all these different organisations which are doing wonderful things. Is there a way that they feel like they're not small, they're huge things, but how do we change the narrative and how do we create more places for us to be more open and feel more authentic? Or is it actually it's never going to be like that and that's okay as well?
Yeah, I think the dial's being shifted over the years, and so my kind of journey with mental health has been over a long period of time, probably since childhood, adolescent, and I think one of the words you used then was narrative, and I think it's become common parlance to talk about mental health, and so it is becoming more accepted. I think, spaces are really important, safe spaces. Places of genuine non-judgment, and places where you can be open and talk and have kind of peer support and all of that sort of thing. I think when I've been involved in those spaces or when I've kind of supported those spaces in my work, it's always really powerful and amazing to see people finding those places of freedom where they can be open and honest. I think stories are really important, and so having more platforms where people can share their stories and talk about those experiences would be great. And there are already amazing, like this one, for example, but there are amazing platforms where people do talk about their mental health. I think there's a missing piece of the jigsaw, though, and I think that's the message around wellness as well. And I used to talk about hope as this kind of abstract thing that was there. It's a kind of future concept. It's something that we're striving towards or that we're working towards. And my story is that I lived in the darkness of mental health challenges and mental health struggles, but I now talk about living in the reality of hope. I live with hope. I'm right inside it, and that's because I'm well. And obviously, wellness is something that needs to be worked on. So when you're, in peak athlete condition like I am, that takes some work. So when you're looking at physical wellness, you have to work on it. You have to eat well. You have to eat clean. You have to do exercise, and the same is for your mental well-being. So I like saying that I'm well, and I like being able to talk in that way. I think it's definitely hope embodied. But it does take work. So I think there needs to be that awareness piece, and I think we've come a long way in that. And but there's still more to do and to challenge that stigma. But I think there also needs to be that awareness of wellness and acceptance that it is okay to be well, and that you can land in that kind of destination. I don't want to cover over the fact though that for some people it is a lifelong challenge, and that it is just a continual uphill struggle. I count myself as blessed, and genuinely I'm grateful every day that I managed to find myself in a space where wellness is my reality.
But it's so hard, right? Because everyone's starting point is different.
Yeah,
everyone's starting point is different, and you shouldn't feel guilty for having a different starting point to someone else.
Yeah,
I hear it so often. Oh yeah, but look how bad it is for someone else. It's actually you don't even know that person. Let's actually say, look how great it is for me, and how do we support others in this journey and ourselves, most importantly. You talked about before we jumped into this conversation about lived experience.
Yeah.
And how that definition of lived experiences, you don't want to be tagged with that thing that you've overcome for the rest of your life as, oh, that's what you are. Because, and I completely get that, because you're so much more. That's a snippet of your life. Just like going to the gym's a snippet, just like having different areas, like your family's a massive snippet. Like there's so many areas of your life, it's like a pie chart and everything's part of the one. But what about systems? The last conversation we had was in person with a group of people, and we were talking about barriers that stop us from being whatever that may be, for us being well in our communities. What can we change from a community level, from a systems level for better wellness?
Yeah. I think So I'm going to touch on that lived experience thing because it does connect a little bit to the systems change piece as well. So the point I was making about lived experience is that quite often we wear it as a badge of honor, and actually what that badge represents, yes, is an experience that we've had that is kind of shaped a part of who we are today. But actually, if we carry that often painful experience around with us as a badge of honor, we're almost carrying a kind of open wound. Yeah, I'm a little bit challenged by the phrase lived experience these days. I think it's hackneyed. I think it's kind of potentially overused, sometimes misused. I talk in the work that I do and the things that I'm involved around the notion of being an expert by experience. So the work that I'm involved in, the kind of primary reason I do what I do is because I've lived through some of the challenges that I'm seeking to address. And my expertise wasn't learnt in a classroom or in a lecture theatre. It was learnt because I lived it. So that lived experience has become an expertise, and it's kind of a lot of it has been resolved. And so I think, part of the systems change thing is probably a language thing as well. And I think the system does like the language of lived experience, but perhaps more in a tokenistic way, because we can bring in our lived experience person when it comes to mental health challenges or homelessness or debts, or the list goes on. And they play a part. But I think until you recognize that lived experience until you recognize it as expertise, and actually, genuinely, I was thinking about politics and those who lead us and set policy, and they will be informed by those with lived experience. And I don't want to say that those in those positions haven't lived through some things themselves, but you don't hear the stories of people in those positions having lived through it. That conversation we were having about systems change and the kind of barriers that are put in place, I'm a little bit rogue and a little bit out there when it comes to the systems change piece, because often when we look at systems change, we're looking at, particularly in the charity, social impact, social good sector, non-profit sector, we are looking from our place out into a different sector, and we're saying you need to change your systems, structure, all of that is prohibitive to people who have experienced poverty, inequality or injustice, actually living in what I've described already as the reality of hope. And that's absolutely true. And, our systems do need to change. It needs to be easier to access advice, whether that's debt, welfare benefits, mental health, housing, so that people kind of aren't continuing to be challenged by those things. And doors need to be open wide for things like that. But I'd suggest that perhaps our sector, the social sector, needs to change as well. And particularly caught on the thought at the moment that, we need some systems change internally as well. Have we created our own structures, our own massive organisations in the non-profit charity sector that mean that actually, we kind of pivot to survive, and we talk a lot about sustainability in the sector. And so how many organisations set up to do one thing 10, 15, 20, 25, 50, 100 years ago, and now do something completely different because they had to pivot to make the business survive. And so actually, yes, the charity still carries on, but ultimately they're not achieving the objective to end a certain type of poverty or challenge a certain type of injustice or inequality. So yeah, I think systems changes is a massive thing. And I think there needs to be a level of introspection first in order to kind of get it right, because I think it's actually got to be a partnership thing. So I think, raging against the machine, which I'm all up for, has to involve raging against the machines that we've created as well as the machines that we kind of work alongside.
And I love that conversation we had. It was like that radical change,
yeah,
and it needed to happen within, I think Kenton talked about a 7-year period.
Yeah.
every 7 years. Like if it's going for, I think initially he wanted, basically Kenton's one of your mentors and was talking about, he built something to support organizations through a funding channel, but he only wanted it to last 7 years.
Yeah.
And then basically shut himself down, which is, when you think of it, it's bonkers.
Yeah.
But actually makes sense because it was doing its initiative that it's not needed after that 7 years.